There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I think I sound a little froggy, don't I? I actually noticed it on the last videos I did too, so I think I might be coming down with something. But I feel pretty good, just a little stuffed up and sleepy. But it's Friday, and I want to do this tag. Again, this is the page 112 tag, which I've done a few times, and which I guess I created. And today is the page 112 tag with a twist. But first let me give you a very brief synopsis of this tag. This is based on a French literary prize where the judges create a short list from the long list based on a blind review of page 112 of each novel. So they don't have access to the information about title, author, or the entire novel. They only have page 112, and from there they generate a short list. So I thought it might make an interesting tag, and so far it seems that I was right. However, one of my readers, Marina, made a comment the last time I did this, maybe a week ago, and she said, "To what degree do you think you're being influenced by the fact that you have access to the title and author, and you have the book in your hand?" She said, "I understand that you haven't read these books, you merely own them in some format, physical book or ebook or whatever. But," she said, "I still think this tag could be done more blindly. In other words, it could be done the way that the French Literary Prize is done." So she suggested that she would send me 3 page 112s, which she has done, with no information other than page 112, and then in a separate message she has sent me the titles and authors. Now, we did have some trouble with the second email, because I said, "Don't worry, I won't open the second email until I'm filming the page 112 tag," but I forgot about the fact that my Gmail has a, 2-line preview. So as soon as it came into my inbox, I could see that the first book was by Toni Morrison. So I wrote back, I said, "Sorry, that didn't quite work." So then she chose a different book number 1, got rid of Toni Morrison, sadly, and instead sent me a new page 112, and then she sent me the answers, the names of the titles and authors, to my Goodreads. And it's still sitting there. I'll show you, if you don't believe me, that it's still sitting there in my Goodreads message account as an unread message. And at the end of this video, I will open it for the first time and see which books these are. So I'm going to try it. I'm really excited, and we'll see how it goes. And then maybe at the end I'll have some comments about how we could continue to do this tag, the blind version. You know, you send me pages or I send you pages, and it could take off. Or we don't always have to do it that way. I think there's still a lot of merit in you or I choosing books in our collection or from the library or whatever that we haven't read and doing it that way. But this is going to be fun. So thanks, Marina, for the great suggestion. So here is book number 1, and the first sentence grammatically reads like it could be continued from the bottom of page 111, but it's a little bit debatable, so I'm going to read it as if it's a standalone sentence. Mate lifted the directional and lined it up with the arc of light. There was a squeal of feedback, and suddenly it sounded like the American, the Russian, and the Japanese voices were right there on the ship with them. Jundo said, "The Russian just said, 'That's checkmate,' and the American is saying, 'Bullshit, the pieces floated away. That's grounds for a new game.' And now the Russian is telling the American, 'Come on, give up the board. We might have time for a rematch of Moscow versus Seoul before the next orbit.'" They watched the second mate track the point of light to the horizon, and when the light went around the curve of the earth, the broadcast vanished. The crew kept staring at the second mate, and the second mate kept staring at the sky. Finally, he looked down at them. They're in space together, he said. They're supposed to be our enemies, but they're up there laughing and screwing around. He lowered the directional and looked at June-do. You were wrong, he said. You were wrong. They are doing it for peace and fucking brotherhood. June-do woke in the dark. He rose on his arms to sit on his bunk, silent, listening. For what? The frost of his breath was something he could feel occupying the space before him. There was just enough light to see water sheen on the floor as it shifted with the movement of the ship. Fish oil that seeped through the bulkhead seams, normally a black gloss down the rivets, was stiff and milk-colored with the cold. Of the shadows in his small room, June-do had the impression that one of them was a person, perfectly still, hardly breathing. For a while he held his breath too. Near dawn, June-do woke again. He heard a faint, hissing sound. So what did you think of that? I thought it was really interesting. It's obviously some military, NASA, space agency, guys on a ship somewhere that are monitoring some cooperative space expedition. There's some of the characters are expressing disappointment that the Koreans, Russians, and Americans are getting along so well up there. Don't really know who June-do is. Sounds like a Korean name to me. Definitely. And probably I was most captivated by the descriptive passage of him in bed with his insomnia and the gorgeous writing about fish oil seeping through the bulkhead seams. That was stunning prose. And imagining that one of the shadows is a person in his room, so presumably it's not, but we don't know. I'm intrigued by that. I'm not sure that it's my kind of story, but it's a very attractive page 112, and I want to know more. What is a directional? And are they supposed to be monitoring the conversations of the astronauts in space or not? I kind of get the sense that they're kind of eavesdropping. So what's all that about? Very intriguing. Book number 2. The light that appeared was the thinnest and sharpest light that I ever imagined, like the inside of the edge of a sharp razor, and the intensification which came upon it with the turning of the wheel was too delicate a process to be watched, even sideways. What happened eventually was not a shout, but a shrill scream, a sound not unlike the call of rats, yet far shriller than any sound which could be made by man or animal. Again, I thought that words had been used, but the exact meaning of them, or the language they belonged to, was quite uncertain. 2 bananas a penny? Not bananas, I said. Makruskin frowned vacantly. It is one of the most compressed and intricate pancakes I have ever known, he said. He put the blanket back over the mangle and pushed it to one side, and then lit a lamp on the wall by pressing some knob in the darkness. The light was bright but wavery and uncertain, and would be far from satisfactory for reading with. He sat back in his chair as if waiting to be questioned and complimented on the strange things he had been doing. "What is your private opinion of all that?" he asked. "What were you doing?" I inquired. "Stretching the light." "I do not understand your meaning." "I will tell you the size of it," he said, "and indicate roughly the shape of it. It is no harm if you know unusual things, because you will be a dead man in 2 days, and you will be held incognito and incommunicate in the meantime. Did you ever hear tell of omnium?" "Omnium?" "Omnium is the right name for it, although you will not find it in the books." "Are you sure that is the right name?" I had never heard this word before, except in Latin. "Certain." "How certain?" "Oh my God! That's amazing! What the hell is going on there?" I wonder if Marina chose similarly themed books. There's things about this that there's a kind of an eavesdropping or a listening in. the narrator and Makruskine. The writing is stunning. I'm just totally drawn in. I don't know what's this shrill scream not unlike the call of rats that sounds like they're trying to say 2 bananas a penny. And what the hell is a compressed and intricate pancake? Stretching the light. Omnium. I am completely captivated by this, and I can also tell it's probably not exactly the kind of story that I would necessarily pick for myself off the shelf, but on the basis of this one page, I am yearning to find out what is going on here. I really, really love the writing. Okay. And the last book, book number 3. I really don't know. Tell me, these are difficult questions to ask. Isn't it rather monotonous here? Not in the least. Our lives have the same pleasures and pains as those outside. Only the terms are different and the emphasis is on other things. Why don't you want a career in the order? Is that from humility? Not because of that. The kind of office I could attain would be consistent with the ideal of humility, or rather would give the opportunity to overcome pride. No, I refused a career for quite other reasons. Really, because any advancement would not have been due to my being a good monk, but for the sort of qualities I brought with me from the outside world, and in fact from my ancestors. My ability with languages, and the fact that I can sometimes deal with matters more quickly and effectively than some of my fellow monks. In a word, my Jewish qualities. And I didn't want that. Tell me, Irvin, how do your fellow monks look on the fact that you were Jewish? Hasn't that been a disadvantage? Not at all. It worked only to my benefit. I did run into individual fellow monks who made it clear how much they disliked my race, but that just presented opportunities to practice meekness and self-control. And then in Hungary, when I was a country pastor, the fact always somehow got about, and the good village faithful saw me as some sort of oddity and paid much greater attention to what I said. Here in Italy, nobody bothers about it. I hardly ever think about it myself. Tell me, Irvin, what do you actually do all day? What work is there for you? A great deal, chiefly prayers and spiritual exercises. You don't write any more? Again, Irvin smiled. No, not for a long time now. You see, it is true that when I first joined the order, I imagined that I would serve the church with my pen. I would be a Catholic poet. But later... What? Your inspiration left you? Not at all. I left it. I realized it was all really beside the point. Mihaly thought deeply. Okay. Well, that one is also very interesting. We have a scene here of a very deep discussion between a formerly Jewish Catholic monk and I don't know who his interlocutor is, but it's certainly an interesting scene. I have to admit that because of the Christian focus of this passage, this will not end up being my first choice, because I have a fairly severe allergy to fiction about Christianity. But I'm interested, the thing that makes me more interested than usual in this is the fact that the monk had been Jewish. So I'm very curious about that. I think the writing is just fine. It's plain, but I have no qualms with the writing. I think it's just fine. And I'm interested in Irvin. Is Irvin Hungarian? He was a pastor in Hungary and now he's in Italy. The guy who's questioning him is Mihaly. Now that sounds like a Hungarian name. So I'm curious about the setting for this story and whatnot. But I'm not really drawn... nothing against the writing at all, but I'm not really drawn to stories about asceticism and renunciation. I wasn't bored by this page, but I think this story would be boring for me personally, just because of my personality. I like my fiction to be about excess, not renunciation. So, I think my reaction has already broadcast which book I would choose. Hands down, it would be book number 2, about the stretching of the light and the 2 bananas a penny and the omnium. What the heck is all that about? The first one I thought was very interesting, but maybe kind of a man story. Kind of a macho story about space adventure. That's not really for me, but I was interested in it. It would be my second choice, and then the third one would be about the formerly Jewish monk. So, without further ado, shall we see what books these are? I have no idea, like I don't have any guesses at all. I don't recognize anything about them. But let's see. I'm going to turn this around so you can... I don't think you can really see the... Marina's message, page 112, reveal, new. I haven't read it yet. She sent it on December 5th at 12:30 a.m. I don't know if that's my time or hers. Don't even know where she is. Oh, for God's sakes. Well, I'm gobsmacked. I'm fascinated by what these books have ended up being. Book number 1 is by a writer that I just finished his book of short stories, and this is The Orphan Master's Son by Adam Johnson. Ah, so Jun Do is, I don't know if he's South Korean or North Korean. How interesting. So this would have been my second choice, and I loved Adam Johnson's short story collection, Fortune Smiles. So, okay. And book number 2, I've heard of this book, and certainly am familiar with the writer's name. It's an Irish writer. The book is called The Third Policeman by Flann O'Brien. I've never read any Flann O'Brien, but this writing is wonderful. And book number 3 is a Hungarian, certainly looks to me to be a Hungarian writer's name, but I don't recognize it. The title is Journey by Moonlight, and the author is Antal Zerb. Well, I don't know a thing about him, so I am going to, let's find out a little bit about him. This is, that novel was from the 1930s, from Hungary. Antal Zerb was born in 1901 in Budapest, died in 1945. He was born to assimilated Jewish parents, but baptized Catholic, okay. And met a horrible end. He was deported to a concentration camp in 1944 and beaten to death the year the war ended. Whew. Well, the biographical details make it all the more fascinating, don't they? So now that I have the reveal, so interesting. I wouldn't change my first and second and third choices, but the biographical detail about the writer draws me more to number 3 than I had been previously. And the fact that I've read the Adam Johnson draws me to it, but I would still pick the Flann O'Brien, who I've never read. So isn't that interesting, hey? What a wonderful idea, Marina. Thank you so much. Now, please give me some comments. Do you think this is a good variation on the tag, or should this be the tag going forward? I still think it's enjoyable for the viewers when I pick books off my shelf and that I haven't read and you don't know until the end. I think that still works really well, but this adds another dimension that replicates the literary prize jury's process, doesn't it? So if you would like to send me page 112s, please do so, but send me a comment first or whatever, and I don't want to get 17 of them next week. Well, no, that would be fine, but I would do them on a regular basis, but not a whole glut of them at once. But literary fiction only, please. I don't want any genre fiction of any kind, and I don't want anybody to try and trick me by sending me a page from a Restoration romance novel and seeing if I end up picking it thinking it's literary fiction. Like, I don't want to play those games. Not short stories. I think short stories, page 112 thing doesn't really work for short stories because I just don't think it does. But if you're interested in doing that, please give me a comment. If you're interested in me, fellow booktubers, if you are interested in me sending you some blind page 112s, I would definitely be up for that. So I'm curious to hear everybody's reaction to this version of the tag. In terms of getting the documents to each other electronically, I do have some thoughts about that to avoid the one glitch that Marina and I ran into, so I won't bore you by going on about that on the video, but I'll put those comments in the show notes. So that was a lot of fun. Thanks for watching.